Heyo YouTube, it's your boy, Orange Star Gaming, coming at you today with some more Tube News. Today on Tube News, we're going to be covering the Sargon of Akkad ban from Patreon and how it has further implications for what may be coming for YouTube at large. So as I said in the beginning, today we'll be covering the Sargon of Akkad Patreon ban and what it has to implicate for other YouTubers and YouTubers at large in the coming days. So, for those of you who don't know Sargon of Akkad, this is Sargon. He is a political YouTuber who is from Great Britain and has covered many subjects over the past year or so. Roughly going on about 2 years now thinking about it, for things such as Antifa and other news like that. And recently, for some of his coverage and actually on a debate video he had with some alt-right political streamers, he ended up being banned from Patreon. Now, I will admit what he did say, and for those of you who want to look it up, you can. For what he did say during the coverage of the stream, I personally don't agree with the way he put it. He did end up using some offensive words that would probably throw some people off, but he intended to use it in a way that would more so focus on the kind of the hypocrisy of the alt-right and quite frankly the hypocrisy of most people at the extreme ends of the political spectrum. In doing this, though, Patreon, because he said some of those words that were would be offensive to certain groups, the platform, no warnings. He hadn't had any warnings previously, but Patreon simply decided to ban him. There are some people online saying that the reason for these bannings may be actually pressures from PayPal or Stripe, the online payment services, and some are even going to say that the reason PayPal and Stripe actually made that situation a pressure situation, and on top of putting more pressure on Patreon, MasterCard may have indeed gotten involved. And while I don't know the full extent of this story, and I would probably want to hear from Stripe, PayPal, and MasterCard myself before I pass any judgment as to whether or not they were actually involved in the situation, whether or not we can actually believe them. The banning of Sargon from Patreon, I do feel, does have some implications for YouTubers in the future, even regular creative YouTubers. The reason for this being, I feel like I've noticed in recent years, particularly with political YouTubers, they are kind of the experimentation ground for what eventually becomes the rules for all of us. They tend to be the first banned from platforms. They tend to be the first kicked off of platforms before ensuing attacks follow. And this is usually because the use of a platform or the platform that is being used by that user is disagreeing with their opinion. In this case, Sargon, they just simply disagreed with some words he used, not so much with what he was saying. And it's kind of resulted in an interesting situation. Patreon has been contacted multiple times about the issue and has people have attempted to resolve the issue. There's been a lot of backlash against Patreon because of what's been going on, and because of that, there continue to be issues with this. But like I said, I wanted to cover what I really think is going to be the issue for YouTubers in the future with this, because Patreon is an alternate method that many YouTubers use to have a more stable, more reliable source of income. And unfortunately, upon attempting to move to other competitors to Patreon, Sargon was not banned from those platforms, but those platforms actually ended up having their funding removed because he is one of the larger political YouTubers, as you can see here. nearing the 1,000,000 subscriber mark. Sargon attempted to move to other ones, such as one more prominent one that popped up called Subscribestar. PayPal and Stripe also ended up pulling their support from that platform, meaning that effectively Sargon has no income from either his Patreon or his Subscribestar at the moment. He may, I haven't been keeping up with this situation from his perspective. I've mostly been keeping it up with a couple different YouTubers who have been covering the subject, but he, as far as it goes, I know he has been cut off from those resources. I don't know if he is receiving donations by other means, either by direct PayPal donation or Bitcoin donation or any other things like that have become somewhat popular on political YouTube in the past couple of years. But I do know that he is currently cut off from those sources. So unfortunately, the implication I feel this has for YouTube at large, the big thing was the fact that Sargon was banned without warning. I really feel it would be a different situation if maybe Patreon had issued a warning, said, hey, you said some things off of our platform that we didn't really like. We want to talk to you about it because you are receiving payment through us, yada, yada, yada. I think that would have been one thing if he had received a warning. Instead of receiving a warning, Sargon was straight up banned from the platform. He received no warnings. He did contact them to attempt to dispute the banning, and the banning has still continued. And again, he attempted to move to Subscribestar and was again met with not the same welcome. Subscribestar was perfectly fine having him on there, but unfortunately now Subscribestar is unable to compete because they are unable to receive funds from major donation services, PayPal and Stripe being the two biggest, and they control most of the flow of online donations and online money flow as far as it's concerned. Unfortunately, I do feel that fact that he did not receive that warning is exactly why we need to be worried as a YouTube community. For those of you that watch YouTube regularly, you've probably been bugged in one or two videos by people asking you to donate to their Patreon. What this can unfortunately mean is YouTubers could be banned, and this isn't even something Sargon said or officially endorsed on his channel. It was something he said on a live stream with another person's channel, although he is still the one that said it. But the fact that you can say one thing, not really receive any warning, and suddenly be completely cut off from a platform is a scary thought. Again, I think right now it really would be a whole nother story if it was a simple warning. If it was something like that where Patreon or PayPal or Stripe or whoever is really influencing the situation sat down with Sargon or communicated with Sargon. It's like, hey, we have guidelines that you have to adhere to in order to continue to use our website. Here are these guidelines. And just kind of showing a more willingness to forgive and a willingness to kind of work with their users. Right now, as it stands, it just makes it very worrying for, I'm assuming much more worrying for large YouTubers who do receive what I assume are significant portions of their income from these donation services. The thing that scares me as somebody who's trying to become more regular in YouTube is just the idea that if you say something even slightly out of line, you don't receive any warning, you don't receive any contact, and you're just kind of left out in the cold. Even though I don't think I would ever say what Sargon said, I do feel that, first off, context had to be analyzed. I have personally looked at the quote myself. The quote, while I do find that the wording Sargon used was maybe inappropriate, the purpose behind the quote was not intended to be offensive to the people the word normally addresses, and I do have to keep that word cut out for two reasons. One, I try not to swear. Two, YouTube and all that fun stuff, and then a whole bunch of other reasons on top of that. But it's really just a big issue if you can say a couple of words, and despite the fact that you had what was at least seemed to me to be a well-meaning intent behind them, just the fact that you've said those words, you don't get a warning, you just get straight banned. And this is coming from somebody who I've worked in many call centers before for various companies, and that is very much a delicate situation. I've worked in contact centers where I've been handling business accounts for corporations and actively on the line with various businesses. And because of that, I did have to adhere by some rather strict guidelines as to what I could and could not say on the phones. That being said, even in those jobs, in those high intensity and delicate situations, I do feel that if I said something that was inappropriate or stupid, in fact, I know on occasion a couple of coworkers did say things that were inappropriate or stupid, there was a process to, sit down and talk with a supervisor or a manager and to work it out. In this case, Sargon has not received that sit down and talk kind of scenario. He has simply been banned. When he attempted to explain what he was saying to Patreon, they kind of ignored him and they continue to uphold their ban. And this just kind of makes it really hard to not believe that Patreon and whoever or whatever is working on Patreon to kind of push them into this situation. It's hard to not make them look like the villain. It's hard not to look like the villain in this situation. And again, what scares me about this is it could have a farther reaching effect for YouTube at large. Because while political YouTube, I think by now they're used to having kind of a kick me sign on their backs. No offense, guys, but you've kind of had that sign sticking there for a while. And a lot of, especially far left-leaning companies have definitely taken advantage of it. It's something that could eventually spread to us in the future. Us regular YouTubers who are just simply trying to cover regular content or doing gameplay videos, it could eventually expand us to where if a platform doesn't like a game we're playing, or if a platform doesn't like one video we made, or anything of the sort, we could find ourselves completely cut off from a main source of revenue. And that is a scary thought. And it could very well lead to something. We constantly have the joke here on YouTube about the adpocalypse, and this could honestly be far worse than the adpocalypse. This could lead to a situation where people's livelihoods can be ruined, and the ability of people to make money on YouTube could be completely cut off, and many of the biggest channels we see on places like YouTube would not be able to support or post the kind of content they do because of it. Now, again, I don't agree with everything Sargon says. I do watch some of his videos on occasion, but he, in this case, I don't really agree with how he worded the situation. I do feel there are better ways he could have worded it, but that being said, I do not feel he deserved an instant ban for what he said, and he certainly deserves to at least be reviewed. Unfortunately, it looks like right now he is not going to receive that opportunity, and on top of that, many other users, more so within the political scene of YouTube, but it has actually already started to somewhat spread to the artistic side of YouTube for different reasons. some artists on YouTube have actually been caught up in these bans just by association more so than actual content that they post, or by being similar to content that's more bannable, but not having their content actually be something that would normally be banned. So unfortunately, this is already starting to spread into creative YouTube. It could very well end up spreading farther. We do have to be careful, but hopefully they Patreon will realize what's going on in the future and help correct the situation, offer more of a warning system and less of a instant ban system, especially when people's livelihoods are depending on this. But in the meantime, we're just going to have to see what's going on. I do hope Sargon's Patreon does get resumed. I think he's probably learned his lesson by this point. He's probably not going to use that particular word in any debates in the future. And I do hope that things go well and we're able to get this situation sorted out. But for now, unfortunately, this could have dark implications for YouTube in 2019. We could be starting off on a very dark doorstep. But in the meantime, if you like my content, I would encourage you to subscribe. I will continue to cover situations like this. And I will also continue to post gaming content, of course, in between. I'm not going to go full Keemstar on everybody. This isn't trauma alert. But in the meantime, I hope that we're all able to get this worked out and we can have another bright year in 2019. Leave your opinion down in the comments. Feel free. I encourage people to review this situation for themselves and see how they feel about it. And I do encourage all of you to also post your opinions down in the comments, because I love hearing from you guys and I love talking with you. So keep it up. Anyway, see y'all next time. If you like this video, like it. If you really like it, please consider subscribing and sharing with your friends. Thanks for watching.